Fans have been talking about the Boruto timeskip for 7 years now, ever since we saw that flash forward scene in chapter 1. And I couldn't tell you how many videos I've seen on YouTube about the Boruto timeskip. And after chapter 80, the timeskip is a bigger topic than ever before, especially since we have lots of new info coming out. So today I want to discuss whether Boruto chapter 81 will actually be a timeskip or not. Now when we talk about a timeskip, we need to understand that the word timeskip is vague and can mean a lot of things. There's no set time length for a timeskip. It could be days, weeks, months, or years. For example, there's actually a 3-month timeskip before the 2.5-year timeskip where Naruto trains with Jiraiya. In Naruto chapter 236, Sakura tells Tsunade she wants to be her apprentice and Tsunade approves. Then in chapter 237, Jiraiya and Naruto talk at the hospital, and Jiraiya says they're going to begin training when Naruto gets out of the hospital. Then in chapter 238, which is the final chapter of part 1, Naruto is out of the hospital, and Tsunade is amazed by how far Sakura has progressed in only 3 months of training. Meaning it's been 3 months since she became Tsunade's student in chapter 236. And then they do the big time skip at the end of this chapter. Now the reason I'm bringing this up is because when we talk about the Boruto time skip, we've always been referring to a 2 to 4 year time skip because Boruto and Kawaki look a few years older in that flash forward scene. But Boruto chapter 81 could be a time skip without being a 3-year time skip. It could just be a few months, just like with Naruto chapter 238. And then Boruto chapter 82 could be the big time skip, for example, similar to Naruto. It doesn't necessarily have to follow that exact sequence, I'm just using it as an example. Now when we examine the new designs Ikimoto made for Boruto, Kawaki, and Sarada, they definitely look more than 3 months older, implying a much longer time skip. But they could just be teasing the new designs a while before we actually see them in the story. I mean, they already showed us Boruto and Kawaki's designs back at the beginning of February, which was after chapter 77 came out, and before chapter 78 was released. So there's no reason they can't do the same with Sarada's design, which was leaked only recently. Now I didn't read the Naruto manga as it was coming out weekly and instead was only watching the anime, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kishimoto teased Naruto, Sasuke, or Sakura's timeskip designs before the manga actually got to the timeskip itself. But anyone who read the manga weekly can let me know if that's true or not in the comments. I mention all of this to say that when we talk about Boruto chapter 81 being a timeskip or not, that length of time can really vary, and for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna say anything longer than 3 months is a timeskip, and anything less than 3 months, like in Naruto chapter 238, will not be counted as a timeskip, even though yes, time will have literally passed off screen. I'm just gonna draw the line at 3 months because of what they did in Naruto and because that feels like a good length of time. I also want to point out that a flash forward scene is not the same thing as a timeskip. In chapter 1, Boruto and Kawaki were older, and then they start fighting and Boruto flashes back and remembers the past where everything began. So all of part 1 is technically just a flashback. If chapter 81 hypothetically starts with Boruto at 15 years old or whatever, and then immediately flashes back to where we left off in chapter 80 again, that's not really a time skip. That's just another flash forward scene. When we talk about a time skip, we're referring to the story jumping forward in time to where Boruto is 14 to 16 years old or so, and then the story just continues from there. Not another flash forward scene. Now with all of that out of the way, will Boruto chapter 81 actually be a time skip or not? Well. To answer that, let's look at some arguments for both sides. The most obvious thing to mention is that in the volume 20 release, which included chapter 80 as its final chapter, there was some text that said that part 1 was complete. And now we have some promotional information about Boruto part 2, which will be called Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, where we also got a new Sarada design as well. And based on the structure of Naruto, which is the prequel series to Boruto, the natural assumption would be that part 1 is when Boruto and his friends are 12 to 13 years old kids, just like part 1 of Naruto, whereas part 2 will have a time skip where Boruto and his friends are 15 to 17 years old or so, just like part 2 of Naruto. That logic definitely makes sense. Furthermore, the end of chapter 80 gave off the impression that they were trying to shove in a time skip right now, and I expressed this feeling when I made my chapter 80 review. Boruto and Sasuke were already outside of the village, and Boruto talked about how he needs to get stronger to take on Kawaki. Eida says she won't tell Kawaki or the Leaf Village where they are. Daemon tells Boruto to get a lot stronger. Sarada looks into the distance and wishes for Boruto and Sasuke to be safe. Toad and Kawaki, who are two of our main antagonists, both express their desire to kill Boruto. and then Boruto says he'll show the world he's Boruto Uzumaki. The last 5 pages or so of chapter 80 somewhat gave off a time skip setup vibe. In addition, the manga all of a sudden went on hiatus after chapter 80 in April and is set to return in August, where Kishimoto's 55-page one-shot chapter about Minato came out about a week ago here in July, 1 month before the Boruto manga returns. And when we look back at the Naruto manga, in between parts 1 and 2, Kishimoto did a 6-chapter story of when Kakashi was a kid in the 3rd Great Ninja War, showing how he got his Sharingan Eye. The placement of this Minato story is very reminiscent of what Kishimoto did with Kakashi back in Naruto, which is yet another reason why this could be a time skip in chapter 81 when the manga returns. Now that being said, there are plenty of counter-arguments to these points. Starting with the Part 1 ending statement in the start of Boruto Part 2 coming in chapter 81, the Boruto anime did the exact same thing before going on hiatus too, except they did it during the middle of the code arc. So Part 2 of the Boruto anime doesn't even line up with Part 2 of the manga, and it definitely won't start with a time skip. Instead, the anime will resume in the middle of the code arc, where they left off with Boruto and the others in the Leaf Village, and then Code invades via his claw mark on Shikamaru just like chapter 68 of the manga. Or maybe they'll throw in an anime-only arc first. This is drastically different from what happened with Naruto, where Naruto Shippuden lined up with Naruto Part 2 and both started after a time skip. So just because Part 1 of the manga supposedly ended, that doesn't necessarily mean the time skip will happen in the first chapter of Part 2, because that won't be the case for the first episode of Part 2 of the anime. Just as Boruto Part 2 will resume in the middle of the code arc in the anime, Boruto Part 2 in the manga can resume in the middle of the current manga arc that fans have been calling the Prophecy arc. If the anime can do it, then the manga can do it too. Both are canon according to the creators of the series. Alternatively, it can start a new arc and have it be the last arc before the time skip in order to set up the time skip more properly, although this would still be problematic, but I'll save that for another video. Most importantly though, there is a specific event that is supposed to happen before the time skip that hasn't happened yet, and that's the final panel of Boruto's Future Vision from chapter 75, which shows Kawaki with his horn and blood on his face, where he's looking down at something, presumably Boruto. This scene has not happened yet. Kawaki didn't have his horn out or blood on his face when he gave Boruto the scar in chapter 78, and he didn't even have blood on his face when he punched the hole through Boruto's chest in chapter 66, which was also in the past, not the future. And we know this scene is supposed to happen before the time skip because Kawaki clearly looks the same age in this future vision as he has throughout all of Part 1, and he clearly doesn't have the mullet he grows over the time skip. So this event literally has to happen before Boruto and Kawaki grow older. But if we have a time skip at the beginning of chapter 81, and we never see this event play out, then this vision wouldn't make any sense. It would just be wrong. Now, I know there's the theory that Boruto's future was changed from the original vision Momoshiki saw, and that would be fine if they actually spent literally any amount of time discussing that scene with Kawaki, but they haven't. Neither Boruto nor Momoshiki have commented on the fact that this Kawaki scene hasn't happened yet, so we need to see this event play out, or at the absolute bare minimum, we need to hear Boruto or Momoshiki talk about it. It would be atrociously bad if they did a time skip without mentioning this Kawaki scene even once. Why even include it in the future vision at that point? If the vision is just wrong, at least say it's wrong. Don't just skip over it like it never happened. That's just really bad writing. So the fact that we haven't seen or discussed this scene yet is a pretty strong indication that chapter 81 won't be a time skip just yet. Furthermore, there isn't even any actual setup for a time skip. There has been absolutely no indication that Sasuke even plans to train Boruto for 3 years or any specific amount of time in general. He's just going to train Boruto so he can stop Kawaki. Similarly, there's no indication that Kawaki is going to wait 3 years to try and kill Boruto again, nor is there any reason for him to wait because he's already strong enough to do it now, so waiting would actually be counterproductive, especially since he currently has Mitsuki on his side also trying to kill Boruto. And the longer Kawaki waits around, the greater the chance that people realize the truth of omnipotence and how their memories are a lie, which would then put the target on Kawaki again. And on that same note, Mitsuki is hell-bent on killing Boruto right now, and I don't see him just letting it go and waiting 3 years. So both Mitsuki and Kawaki should be on Boruto's ass at all times. Now as for Code, he seems to be ready to enact his plan based off of chapter 80, but he also has reason not to invade the Leaf because Eida and Daemon are there, so he's either going to invade as soon as his army is ready, which might be right now, or he's just not going to invade until Eida and Daemon are gone somewhere. Neither case gives him any reason to wait 3 years specifically to make a move. This greatly differs from Naruto Part 1. Jiraiya learned that Orochimaru had already transferred to a new vessel and could not transfer again for 3 more years. And he also learned that the Akatsuki wouldn't make their move to capture the Jinchuriki for 3 more years as well, so they could make more money first. And because of that, Jiraiya took Naruto with them to train for 2.5 years so that Naruto would be ready to face the Akatsuki. Our main villains had specific reasons why they weren't going to make their move for 3 years specifically, and so Naruto trained with Jiraiya in accordance with that information. There is none of that here in Boruto. There's no actual setup for a time skip like there was in Naruto, which is an indication that the time skip isn't actually going to happen right now. In addition, on the final page of chapter 238 titled Departure, which marked the end of Naruto Part 1, Kishimoto literally wrote, Naruto Part 1, the end, whereas we did not get anything like this in Boruto Chapter 80. Given that Kishimoto was the author of Naruto and is currently the author of Boruto, which is a sequel to Naruto, I would expect him to do the same thing he did in Naruto and have it say, Boruto Part 1, the end, at the end of the last chapter of Boruto Part 1. Sure, he's not the artist anymore, but I think Ikimoto would be down to do it considering he was Kishimoto's assistant throughout Naruto, and it's not like it's a back-breaking task to write that one extra sentence. So time skip or not, I personally find it very odd that this wasn't included in Chapter 80, and instead was only written in the Volume 20 release, which, let's be real, gets way less attention than when the individual chapters come out. The volumes are where they make their money, but way more people read the chapters on Viz versus buying the volume releases. So if you want to hype up a time skip and make sure your fans know it's coming, you're better off saying Part 1 is over in Chapter 80 than you are in Volume 20. Or better yet, do it in both. But that wasn't the case, and I find that odd. I'm not going to sit here and ignore the fact that they stated Part 1 ended in the volume release, and that they've announced the name for Boruto Part 2. But I do find it odd that they didn't say Part 1 was over in the manga itself. And then in regards to the Minato manga thing, first of all, this is a Naruto thing, not a Boruto thing. It's always been about Naruto, and it was a Naruto character popularity poll, where the top 22 were drawn by Kishimoto and the winner got a one-shot manga, where Minato was the winner. At no point was it ever linked to Boruto, and it even has Naruto Gaiden in the title, not Boruto, Naruto Next Generations, or anything like that. Unlike the Kakashi Chronicles, which were literally part of the Naruto manga, the Minato manga isn't part of the Boruto manga. It's a Naruto edition or Naruto side story, just like how the Shin Uchiha arc called Naruto Gaiden, the 7th Hokage and the Scarlet Spring, was a Naruto edition and is technically chapters 701 to 710 of the Naruto manga. The Minato story is a similar case. It might be timed similarly to the Kakashi Chronicles, and the whole vortex plotline of the Minato chapter might be related to the title of Boruto Part 2 being called Two Blue Vortex, but it's not actually the same thing as the Kakashi Chronicles because it's not part of the Boruto manga itself. And lastly, I'll admit this is a pretty silly point, but I'll mention it anyway. The final chapter of Naruto Part 1 was titled Departure. It was about Naruto's departure from the village to go train with Jiraiya. By contrast, Boruto Chapter 80 is titled What Dad Would Do, and the conclusion Boruto came to was that he needed to get stronger to turn this brother-killing brother situation into a mere quarrel between siblings, because that's what his dad would do, and is exactly what his dad did with Sasuke. It doesn't have a title related to Boruto going off to train with Sasuke for 3 years. That aspect of the chapter really just came in the last 5 pages or so of the chapter. I wouldn't sit here and place all your bets about a time skip on a chapter title, but I normally expect a more fitting title for the final chapter of Part 1, but that's just my opinion. And speaking of titles, I've said for a long time that it's been hinted at ever since Chapter 1 that Boruto Part 1 is the story of Boruto and his dad Naruto, whereas Part 2 will just be Boruto's story, and this would be symbolized by Kawaki sending Naruto away near the end of Part 1. And even the name of Boruto Part 2 represents this by not including Naruto in the title. Rather than saying Boruto, Naruto Next Generations like with Part 1, now it's just Boruto, Two Blue Vortex, and that's because Naruto literally isn't present in the story at the moment and probably won't return for a long time because Kawaki is keeping him trapped in Daikoku 10. Now with that in mind, if Boruto Part 2 is supposed to signify the beginning of Boruto's story rather than the story of both Naruto and Boruto, then I find it odd that the final chapter and plot point of Part 1 is Boruto saying he's gonna do what his dad did, rather than saying this is his story and that he'll do his own thing like he did in chapter 10. They are giving mixed signals here in my opinion, and that could be because Boruto's not going to fully dive into his own path for a few more chapters, which in my opinion is when the time skip should occur. I think the time skip should occur when Boruto takes his own path rather than following in Naruto's footsteps, and the reason why Boruto changes paths could be related to that Kawaki panel we still have yet to see play out in real time. That might sound a bit more subjective than the other stuff I've talked about, but I'm not saying it just because I think it would be good writing to have the time skip occur when Boruto forges his own path. I also genuinely believe that it just makes sense with what they foreshadowed in the first chapter and with the titles of parts 1 and 2. I think that's a fair look at both sides for whether or not chapter 81 will be a time skip, and as for my personal opinion, I'm not fully sure what I expect to happen, but I lean towards the prediction that we're not going to get a time skip just yet, and at the most we'll get something along the lines of a flash forward scene like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, where we see Boruto at an older age and he recalls the events that happened after chapter 80 and the mistakes he made or something like that. I could definitely see them doing another flash forward scene to hype up the fans again, but I'm very skeptical that they would skip past what should happen in the present time after chapter 80 in light of that Kawaki panel and the naming structure of Boruto parts 1 and 2. And then there's a whole other side to this which just has to do with what would be better for the story, which I'm going to save for an upcoming video because that will be an incredibly long, insightful, and heartfelt discussion. But I want to hear what you guys think. After hearing some evidence for both sides of the discussion, do you think we will have a time skip in chapter 81? Or do you agree with me and think that we won't get it for a little bit longer? And if you think we'll have to wait a little bit, do you think they'll do another flash forward scene like they did in chapter 1? And in light of that upcoming video, do you think doing a time skip right now is a good or bad idea? Let me know in the comment section below, but that's a wrap on today's video, so thank you guys for watching until the end.
You're already under my genjutsu.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, check out my podcast channel, become a member, and hit the bell icon for notifications.
Sorry, Sasuke. Maybe some other time.
Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.